Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 36 now, and a very exciting evening it is, as we are actually, and I really mean it, finishing chapter 7 tonight. We only have about 2 paragraphs left, maybe a paragraph and a half left of chapter 7, so we're totally going to finish it. I can't promise how far we're going to get into chapter 8 tonight, because, of course, can't help but notice that chapter 8 starts with another dream or vision. So, that may slow us up a bit here tonight. But that's okay. It's all worth it. Hey, so first, before we get started, I was just noticing on the chat before we began on the Twitch chat that there are a bunch of people there are some people who are new, and I don't want to, sort of assume that everybody who's here has been here live before. So if you're just joining us live, I wanted to kind of explain very briefly kind of what's going on and how this works. So, of course, we're primarily broadcasting on twitch.tv/SignumU. I'm also simulcasting this on through my Twitter feed as well, so some people can get at least my video feed and my audio there, though you don't get my screen through that. But I am going to be monitoring the Twitch chat as much as I can during the course, but the primary chat that I'm monitoring where people are contributing to a discussion is on Discord. And if you go to twitch.tv/SignumU, you can see, we can do, somebody will just toss up now the link for the Discord channel. You just go navigate to that on the web and log in. You can join us here on the Lore Hall Questions for Corey channel of the Twitch chat, and we're good. So, all right. So that's what we're doing, and we're here in game, of course, in the Lore Hall in Bree, which we'll be hanging out here while we have our book discussion, and then afterwards we'll be heading out for our field trip here. So thank you, Crystal, for throwing that up there. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. So, good. And Druid's Fire, of course, is all over it. Figured she would be. JJ asks, is our field trip going to be level 20 accessible? Well, yes and no. No, in the sense that we're going to be going up into the North Downs, but we're not going to go anywhere super dangerous. We should be able to protect Lobies pretty well, I think, this evening, so it should be fine. Yeah, cool. So yes, we're going to continue up into the North Downs, continue to see where the sort of the world development in the North Downs. So hey, level 7, you'll be fine. No problem. Okay, I can't promise that you won't die, but there's a reasonable chance that we'll be able to help you survive. And we're on the Gladden server this evening in game. All right, a couple quick announcements before we start. First, I just wanted to announce, as I announced last week, that TexMoot is coming up. Our next regional event, which is going to be in Texas, down in Fort Worth, and I hope that those of you Texans around will be able to join us. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be January 13th, but more importantly, in the short term, they have a call for papers that's open for a couple more weeks. So if you have an idea or a thought, and there've been a lot of good ideas that have come out of our discussions here in this series so far over the course of this year. I think that there are some very interesting presentations and discussions that could be had at one of our regional events from some of you who have been making some really great observations. So anyway, that would be that'd be great. So if you're interested in that, go to texmoot.org, and you'll see the submission information there on the website. Again, texmoot.org. The TexMoot folks have created a whole special website for TexMoot because it's Texas, so they have to do things bigger down there. At least that's what they tell me. Anyway, so I can't wait for my second trip down to Texas, my second ever visit to Texas, and looking forward to getting to meet as many of you as I can. And we are definitely working on expanding to more regional events. It's one of the main things that I'm really wanting to push during this academic year, is more regional events. So we'll definitely keep you posted as those develop. And if you think you would like to maybe help out bringing an event to your region, let us know. Send an email to info@signumu.org, and we'll see what we can do. We'll be in touch. Anyway, all right. I say, Tony says, if you submit a paper proposal, does that commit you to attending? Well, no, it doesn't commit you. I mean, if your paper is accepted, then, you need to be in communication with them. You don't want to just like not show up. Right. But I mean, if something changes and you have to back out, they can be understanding of that, of course. Yeah. Oh, Matt, it's too bad you can't make it on the 13th of January. Though, Matt, I am hopeful. I would love to see us do a regional event down near you. We need to do something a little further north than Texas. I think I would love to see a Carolina moot go on. So I think that would definitely be awesome. So text me with the texmoot.org. That should be the site, I think. So, all right. That's announcement number 1. Announcement number 2 is... okay. This is kind of a tentative sort of announcement, or rather... no, I was going to call it a provisional announcement. That's not quite right either. So, if you follow me on Twitter, you may have seen my sort of giddy postings recently about how I have finally... and to my surprise, maneuvered my sons into reading Tolkien with me. But we're not reading The Lord of the Rings. We're jumping straight to the Silmarillion. And I don't really know... Well, okay, I do know exactly how we got here. And it's all the fault of... Blind Guardian and their Nightfall in Middle-earth album, if you are familiar with that. If you're not, you should listen to it because it's pretty awesome. German heavy metal band, which does a lot of really interesting mythology and folklore-oriented music, and did a brilliant album on the Silmarillion, which is really, really neat. And my sons love it. My sons absolutely love that album. And so, we got to talking about it, and we they wanted me to they wanted me to tell them the stories. So I started telling them the stories behind all the different songs in the album. And, we finally got to the point where we were, listening to it again. And I was like, hey, would you guys like to actually hear the full stories? Because needless to say, I have Martin Shaw's Recording the Silmarillion on my phone. So I'm like, all right, I can dial that right up right now. And so we started reading the Silmarillion. My sons are 14 and 9. 14 is the age that I first attempted and failed to read the Silmarillion. My younger son is 9, which kind of blows my mind, but he's into it. They really dig it. We've been having a good time. So here's the thing. So my son Matthias, my 9-year-old son Matthias, he wants to do a podcast, little sort of mini series with me, where we kind of talk our way through the album, looking at the lyrics, listening to the songs, talking about the lyrics of the songs and their relationship to the story. This was his idea, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds like a good idea to me. So anyway, so we're gonna do that. Now here's the catch. I don't know when because my 9-year-old son has a very busy social calendar. So I have no idea exactly when that is gonna happen. So here's what I recommend. The best thing you can do if you would like to join me for that is to subscribe to our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/signumu. That way you'll get an email notification when the stream comes online, and I'll try to make sure to put the right title so that it notifies you about what that is going to be. I'm thinking probably this coming Saturday, we'll do our first. I don't know how many sessions it's going to take us to do, but anyway. We're gonna be working on it. Several of you are asking how far I've gotten in the Silmarillion with my sons. Well, again, because this was, their interest is sort of focused around Blind Guardian's album. We started with the Darkening of Valinor. I had already given them a bunch of background and introduced them to most of the primary characters anyway. My thought is actually, we'll go back and do some of the earlier stuff later on, but it actually is not a bad place to jump in, really. So we started with the chapter on the Darkening of Valinor, and we got through. Let's see, where we ended this morning was right after the Balrogs chased off Ungoliant. That's as far as we got. So we got the Darkening, and then we got the Thieves' Quarrel with Morgoth and Ungoliant. So that's the thing that we're doing. So anyway, so we'll see. We'll do the first couple songs on the album anyway. We'll go through the album in order because it's me, so we'll go through them in order. But anyway, so this is I'm gonna see. My son has a lot of opinions about this, so we'll see what happens here. Anyway, so that's again my kind of provisional announcement. Not really sure exactly when that's going to happen, but it should be a lot of fun. So I encourage you to join us for that. So again, easiest thing to do: subscribe to twitch.tv/SignumU, and you'll get a notification for it. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll definitely be tweeting about it before I begin as well. So anyway, that's going to be great. So Istui, I'm debating whether to skip of Beleriand and its realms. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure if we'll skip over that or not. I might, but we'll see. Alternatively, I might bring a couple copies of the books with me so they can look at the map while we listen to it. But anyway, okay. Let's carry on. Let's move on back into Chapter 7 of the Fellowship of the Ring. It's funny, a couple of you were saying, Tom Hillman, I know, was saying on Twitter earlier this week that, looking back, it's pretty conspicuous, right? We've done, we did 8 sessions, 8 full sessions, plus a little bit, I think. On Chapter 7, and looking back at Chapter 2, which is this really long chapter and obviously super important, and we only did 4 maybe sessions on that, and it seemed at the time like we were going slowly, and Tom was sort of saying, kind of feel like we need to circle back, and because we skipped a lot of stuff in retrospect, right? And that's kind of true. I'm not going to go back right now because I want to continue forward, but of course it's perfectly possible that we might come back and do the beginning again when we get to the end to give it the full treatment, which actually might be kind of a fun approach when you think about it. But anyway, so let's continue on. All right, so tonight's class I've titled Departures, because of course we're not only saying goodbye, a very brief goodbye to Tom Bombadil, and a somewhat more lingering goodbye to Goldberry, but of course they're also going to be departing in some other ways, and perhaps we'll even get as far as that. But a couple questions. I mentioned one of these last class that we're going to do that one second. The one on Goldberry's washing day, Fourth Dauntless. I wanted to make sure to get to that, and we're about to. But first, Kyle, I saw you were here this evening, so that's great. I wanted to address your observation, which was great. Another one of those things that I miss. And by the way, isn't it really cool how this happens, right? We'll spend an hour and a half talking about a handful of paragraphs, and there are still things that we just never get to and never talk about. In the discussion on Tom talking to the hobbits and taking them through the history of Ea and how he was first and witnessed much, I found it fascinating that Tom ends up falling asleep. We never talked about the falling asleep. I always found this striking and wondered why this happens, and it wasn't until listening to the discussion that a new thought came to me. In the telling of the history, does Tom find himself at the end coming back to the beginning of Ea, or in fact before the beginning of Ea, and during this time, before time, was he sleeping? And if Bombadil was sleeping before Ea, what does this mean to us witnessing him falling asleep in the recounting of the history and beginnings of Ea? Okay, great question. So the general. So first is sort of just the general observation. Why does he drift off as if he's asleep, right? And is that connected to this sort of progression through history? Now, one caution that I would give is that although certainly the general trend of his recollections is backwards in time, of course, until we end up into this sort of enchanted vision that the hobbits get of, what looks like the dark under the stars when it was fearless, right? So, that's... I hesitate because, when you look at the events in order, this is not just like Tom Bombadil hitting the Wayback Machine and scrolling back and back. It bounces around a little bit forwards and back sometimes. But still, I agree that the general trend is backwards. So why does Tom Bombadil fall asleep? I don't know. See, Tony, that's exactly the kind of question that I would have. Tony Mead was just saying, saying Bombadil slept right through the music of the Ainur, right? Because presumably that's what would come before, right? That's Tom has to have been before that, I think. That is to say, he had to have existed prior to that. He came from outside of Arda himself, presumably. See, I don't know. Right, exactly, Kyle. Did Bombadil sleep before Ea and wake up during Ea's creation? It's conceivable. It's hard for me to fit that in, right? If he's depicting himself as having been asleep prior to, if we are to take that, because let me just say, I don't think that's a given, right? The fact that he falls asleep there, I track with what you're saying, but I don't necessarily think that that's the only logical way to sort of take that. That his falling asleep is in that sense autobiographical, right? That he's, by sleeping, signaling something about his own state at that time. Like, this is what I remember, and we go back, and then I'm asleep, right? I'm not sure that it has that kind of, that sort of autobiographical significance. I'm open to the idea, but I'm not really sure. So, but let's for a second consider that. Like, let's assume that that's true and think about how that would work. And I'm not really sure. I'm not really certain if, because it doesn't make much sense to me. In what sense would he have been asleep prior to the, to the awakening of Arda? If he's a spirit, if he's one of the Ainur who predates Arda, there isn't really a sense in which he was asleep. So I'm not sure I can figure that. And it doesn't feel quite right. The whole autobiographical element of it. To take his sleeping essentially as a kind of story itself, right? Like, this happened, and I remember this happening, and I remember this happening, and then I was asleep, right? To take his falling asleep as basically a statement that says, and then I was asleep. I'm not convinced of that. That doesn't feel right to me. The relevance of his sleeping, I do agree that it's significant and it's interesting, and we should have talked about it. But this strikes me as the significance of his sleeping. I think it's not about the time frame that he's describing at the moment that he falls asleep. I think it's about the sort of experience that he is sharing with the hobbits at the time. That is, it is right when they are having their enchantment experience that he is drifting off into sleep. The impression that it leaves with me is that Tom slips from telling stories in which he's kind of bringing them along imaginatively with him with the stories, to dreaming himself, sleeping and dreaming, and they're participating in his dream. So I think that him slipping into sleep is sort of Tom himself interfacing with his story differently. This is no longer a story that he is merely telling. This is now a dream that he's having. And like Alice through the looking glass, they are a part of his dream, like Alice was a part of the White King's dream, right? And that, I think, is so... I tend to tie it with the enchantment experience that they're having there, rather than thinking about it as again, like a piece of the narrative in itself. Yeah. Exactly, Tom. His is the mind that is weaving the dream. Exactly. And they're being included in that dream. And that's why they fall under that particularly, the experience they have in that moment at the end. And when we talked about the Hobbit's enchantment at that moment, but it seems to me uncoincidental that the time when they slip into that most enchanted, when they're experiencing, fairy and drama, to use the term that Tolkien uses in his On Fairy Stories essay, that is this drama that is being, made by one mind and other minds are participating in it. The fact that Tom Bombadil is asleep when that happens is what seems to me the most significant thing. Okay. Sorry, I obviously need to tell my Apple Watch to behave itself. Okay. So yeah, I think that's, in a sense, Kyle, he's falling into enchantment, and they follow him into that enchantment, except it's not enchantment for him. It's like a dream. It's like in his sleep, he is walking once again in his memory in that place, and he's able to bring them along with him in that experience. So yeah, JJ says maybe he got to the part of the tale called The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, and that put Tom to sleep as he put everyone else to sleep. JJ, it is certainly ironic, right? Given how much putting of folks to sleep there is in, how often he puts other people to sleep in The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, that he ends up falling asleep there. No question. And Tungo, yes, I agree. Tungo, I think it was you who just made a really interesting post on the discussion board about dreams and fairy and on fairy stories, right? I was thinking about that too. I was going to quote some of it, but I couldn't fit it all on. But I recommend that to everybody. Yeah. Anyway, I agree. I think that stuff's all kind of involved there. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Now, fourth Dauntless. Let's get to your excellent question that I postponed from last week. And I postponed it because you talk about the clothing, which we hadn't gotten to, and we did that last week, so now I'm ready to talk about it. What does it mean for this in-text day to be Goldberry's washing day? Tom tells us that it's her washing day and her autumn cleaning, but what is being washed and cleaned exactly? Maybe it's the forest, but then what about this day belongs to Goldberry specifically? Also, Tom and Goldberry have changed their clothes. This may seem a minor detail. Each of us changes our clothes every day, after all, but in previous classes we saw both Tom's and Goldberry's clothing intimately bound up with who they are. Perhaps the change reflects the coming winter. If the first frost came the night before, killing the last of the water lilies, it might explain why Goldberry is now clad in winter colors. And then perhaps Tom's colors reflect hope for the spring and the return of the lilies to the pool where he found Goldberry. Love that idea, by the way. Given the rather conspicuous change in clothing immediately after washing day, it seems likely that the two are related. How do you understand the change in clothing and its connection to the events of the day? Great question. Okay. I think that you make I think that you're right. I mean, I think that the connection between those two things is pretty compelling, actually, because especially with Goldberry, right? We hear her from outside, right? But they don't see her in the morning when they wake up. They saw her the night before, and then they wake up and they're told it's Goldberry's washing day. And the next time they hear her after the washing day is over, she looks different, right? She's changed. Her clothes have changed, and she is in, exactly as you point out, winter clothing, right? She's in white and silver instead of silver green with her with flowers in her girdle, right? So that connection seems to me inescapable, and I agree with your interpretation that her colors do seem to be wintry colors, right? And because, of course, that is clearly supported by Tom's words in his song before, right? I had an errand there gathering water lilies, to please his pretty lady, right? The last ere the year's end, to keep them from the winter, to flower by her pretty feet. So he says the last ere the year's end, to keep them from the winter. And so this is the last day he was going to be able to get water lilies. So the idea that this day, Goldberry's washing day, corresponds to the first day when the water lilies are all gonna, get frosted, killed by the first winter frost or something. That definitely works. I mean, so those three things seem to sort of fit together, right? The last of the water lilies, to keep them from the winter, Goldberry's washing day, and then her wearing white and silver, right? So I'm totally in agreement with you about that. But and as I said, I love your interpretation of Tom's clothes, right? How Tom is in he's wearing forget-me-not blue, right, with green stockings instead of his yellow boots. And the idea of him being all in forget-me-not blue and his dash of green, right, around his stems, right around his feet. He looks like a flower on the day after, on washing day, right? The idea that he's sort of pointing towards the coming spring, that kind of works. I like that. But what does that say about washing day itself? And answering, going back to Fourth Dauntless's very sensible initial questions, what is being washed and cleaned exactly? And why is it Goldberry's washing day in particular? And Tony, by the way, yes, I agree, Tony. Tony points out that there's that mythical tension between whether they're representing the changes of the season in their clothing or whether they're causing those things. Yes, exactly. And Tony, but that exactly comes back to the washing day thing, right? If this is Goldberry's washing day. Okay, so I mean, we talked about this some last week. And how, of course, it's meant to sound just like a normal, like it's like Aaron's day, right? It's laundry day for Goldberry. That phrase seems designed to evoke that kind of simple answer to the, it's like the day when Goldberry does the wash. And the fact that their clothes are changed seems to fit with that, in fact, right? She's just done laundry, so they're dressed in new clothes, right? Because they're all, their other clothes are clean now after washing day. So that, that would, if that's all, if it was just a day in which we're told it was Goldberry's washing day and then they were in new clothes at the end, we'd have no reason to suspect that there was anything more to it apart from the whole, like, she's the daughter of the river thing. But it's pouring rain, right? It's Goldberry's washing day and her autumn cleaning. And that's Tom's explanation for why it's raining so heavily that day, it seems, right? So it's impossible to think of Goldberry's washing day in the context in which Tom points it out and uses that phrase. It's impossible to think of this as a coincidence, right? That, like, it's her washing day and it happens to be raining on her washing day, right? And clearly her own response when she comes in and Tungo, I think, yes, Tungo was just quoting it. The rain has ended and new waters are running downhill under the stars. I think that makes it pretty clear that the rain was the washing that Goldberry was doing. That she is in some sense responsible for it. Did she cause the rain, right? Or is she just celebrating the rain, or what? But in any case, she's talking about the rain, right? When she talks about new waters running downhill under the stars, right? And that's the end of the washing day, right? So clearly the two of them are connected, right? Clearly the two of them are associated with each other. But what exactly is the association? I'm not really positive. I don't feel like I understand myself. I don't feel like I understand myself what is being washed exactly. Is it the forest that's being washed? Is it her, in a sense? Because she's different. She's changed, right? Tom does say it's her autumn cleaning. Does that mean it's when she cleans herself in the autumn? That this is some kind of seasonal ritual for her? Not surprising with a flower spirit, right? That there would be I'm like, going in for the winter now, and later on in the spring, I'm going to come out and blossom again. That's, but it doesn't sound like that. That is, I can't really fit it with that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure. And Eric Hebb, that's my thought too. Eric Hebb says if it's meant to be analogous to human washing days, it should be Goldberry washing something else, right? Like the laundry. Exactly, I agree. And what is being washed would seem to be the forest, the hills, right? New waters are flowing down the hill, downhill under the stars, she says, right? Even the rivers, in a sense, the refreshment of the rivers with the new water, right? So I don't really know. Now, Kyle points out, if Goldberry can change the weather, what does that mean when Tom says of himself, I am no weather master? We'll come to that. That'll be in our next slide, our first text slide of the day here today. But we'll keep that in mind when we get there. Yeah. And no, Catriona, the washing day isn't on the equinox. We're already past the equinox by a few days, because it's been, 4 days since they left, since the birthday, right? So we're at I don't think it's I don't think it's the equinox. Yeah. Yeah. Well, but I want to be cautious, because of course we have to think in terms of the Shire calendar. Somebody figure it out. When is the autumnal equinox in the Shire calendar? Because of course the Shire calendar isn't exactly the same as our calendar. But anyway. Okay. Yeah, JJ, I think the safest thing to do is to count halfway between the summer and winter solstices. Yeah, exactly, because those are marked, midsummer and Yule. All right. Now, one thing that we have to acknowledge, and Tom was, of course, pointing this out a few minutes ago, we're not necessarily given enough information actually to answer all of these questions, right? We're talking about Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, which is, of course, famously one of those places in the text where Tolkien himself said that he wanted to leave things mysterious. So we may have many of these questions which the text just does not equip us to answer. It's fun to speculate and to think about it. I do think, as D. Schwab says, could the washing day be for both Goldberry and the whole valley together? Are these things the same? We do need to remember the connection, especially with Goldberry, right? To say that she is part of the washing, and that she's washing, the whole valley, the whole Withywindle Valley, that the Withywindle Valley is being refreshed by the new waters that are running downhill. Well, where are they running to? The Withywindle Valley, right? The river itself is going to be, flushed with this new water that's going to be coming down from the rain. And that's her mom, right? She's the daughter of the river. So yeah, we do have that kind of identity, which perhaps is one of the things that makes it hard for us to really kind of define exactly what's going on. Yeah, exactly. She is the washing, doing the washing, and the one who's being washed, in some sense, all three. Yeah. Okay. All right. Tony thinks the Shire calendar has the equinox on the 22nd. Okay, so this would be 5 or 6 days after the equinox then. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, anyway, I don't think that we totally solved that one, but again, I'm not 100% sure that it's solvable. But for Thoughtless, I think you're really on a great track here. I think that your observation of the significance of the change of clothes in correlation with the washing day, I think that gives us some of the most interesting and significant pieces of data that we have to apply to the question, basically. Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to the text. So this is the slide we didn't finish last time because I wanted to finish up our discussion of Tom and the Ring, which was really fun. As Tom is now, I want to look at his very quick transition, right? Where be you a-going? Old Tom Bombadil's not as blind as that yet. Take off your golden ring, your hand's more fair without it. Come back, leave your game, and sit down beside me. We must talk a while more and think about the morning. Tom must teach the right road and keep your feet from wandering. Now that last phrase in particular is very double-edged, right? And Tony, you're absolutely right, by the way. Goldberry's washing day and the connection with the clothes and the equinoctial question and everything. Great topic, great paper topic. That would be a really fun presentation at Tex Moot or another regional moot. Anyway, notice how double-edged that last comment is. Tom must teach the right road and keep your feet from wandering. First of all, notice how Tom is not only very observant in more than one sense, right? Observant in the sense that he can see Frodo even when Frodo's invisible, but of course observant also in the sense that he can see what's going on with Frodo, right? He seems to get it right away. The temptation that Frodo is experiencing, he asks the really piercing question, where be you a-going? Which I don't think even Frodo knows the answer to here, right? Take off your golden ring, your hand's more fair without it. That's a very gentle correction of Frodo, right? Rather than rebuking him and being like, Frodo, what are you thinking? Right? I mean, like if you had stepped across that threshold and gone off invisible into the forest, who knows if anyone would ever have seen you again? He doesn't go there, right? He's not chiding Frodo. He just says, I like your hand better without the ring, right? It's an extremely gentle summons of Frodo to himself, right? And then he immediately changes the subject. He doesn't make a big deal of it. This is, it's funny because, tact, discretion, and this particular kind of courtesy is something that you wouldn't necessarily associate. At least I wouldn't normally associate it with Tom Bombadil. You sort of think, I don't know. I mean, I tend to think of Tom Bombadil as just kind of oblivious half the time, right? I'm dancing around singing about the color of my own clothing. This is a very penetrating speech for Tom, right? Again, shows a very nuanced understanding of, perception of things, what's going on, and a very gentle bringing of Frodo. He just manages to bring Frodo back into the community without any problems, right? Erokeb, I agree. This is a very different style from "take it off, fool, take it off," which is Gandalf's approach, right? Absolutely. Or again, Erokeb, Gandalf's later, or not later than that, but later than this comment, "You're lucky to be here too after all the absurd things that you've been doing," right? Tom doesn't work like that. Tom's relationship with Frodo isn't like that. Instead, he just says, we must talk about, he changes the subject, but notice how he hasn't totally changed the subject, right? Tom must teach the right road and keep your feet from wandering, which is, of course, just what he's done. He means the next day, right? I'm going to teach you the right road so that you don't wander off the path. But, of course, he's also literally keeping Frodo from wandering away right now. And I love the double meaning of that last phrase. Yeah, Arthur, I think that's exactly right. He chastens in a way that lets Frodo still save face, even if he privately feels embarrassed at his actions. Yeah, I mean, notice how this doesn't even come up, right? There isn't even any discussion of this. Like, no one, the whole thing just gets kind of smoothed over and dropped because of Tom Bombadil's not only very perceptive observations, but his then adroit changing of the subject as well. Yeah, that's interesting. Matt's still thinking about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, as we were at the beginning, with the appearance of the castle. So this is reminding Matt of the gentle chiding Gawain gets at the end of his encounter at the Green Chapel. That in loyalty he lacked a little, because he loved his life, right? He is, by taking the belt and not admitting that he had the belt, he is, he's definitely, he's has misstepped, right? But he's not going to be, he's not chided too harshly for that. He's excused immediately by sort of the context in which the Green Knight generously puts it in. Yeah. Though, of course, Matt, the big difference there, right, is that Gawain in the poem is extremely harsh with himself, right? He doesn't let it go. And he not only is harsh with himself, but he harshes off on Lady Bersilac and everybody. I mean, he's not in a good headspace after that moment, Sir Gawain himself. And with Frodo, we don't see that. We see it kind of go the other direction there. Yeah. Now, let's see. Somebody had an observation about Tom and the ring before that I wanted to I can't find it. Yeah, anyway, sorry, I can't find it. But the idea about Tom's relationship with the ring, right? Remember this passage when we get to the Council of Elrond. We're going to get there, right? So next year, this time, when we're doing the Council of Elrond and we get to the discussion of Tom Bombadil, I'm going to want to come back to this in light of what Elrond says. Because I think that some of Elrond's comments about Tom Bombadil are pretty interesting in light of what we see with Tom Bombadil here. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Meanwhile, let's follow Tom in his changing of the subject and look at where Tom is taking our conversation, right? Which is towards leaving and departure. Frodo laughed, trying to feel pleased, and taking off the ring, he came and sat down again. Tom now told them that he reckoned the sun would shine tomorrow, and it would be a glad morning, and setting out would be hopeful. But they would do well to start early, for weather in that country was a thing that even Tom could not be sure of for long, and it would change sometimes quicker than he could change his jacket. "I am no weather master," said he, "nor is aught that goes on two legs." Yes, Arthur, I agree. Trying to feel pleased is a very important element in that first sentence, right? He's laughing. He's taking up Tom's invitation to treat it lightly, right? But it's an act. He doesn't really take it lightly. The thing that I find fascinating about this line, though, it does imply, the fact that we're told that he is trying to feel pleased implies that, Arthur, just as you say, he's being unsuccessful in that attempt to feel pleased, right? What we're not told is, why does he fail to feel pleased, right? What keeps him from being pleased? And I'm not sure. There are a couple possible reasons, right? One could be, Arthur, as you're saying, he could be unhappy because he feels guilty and is acknowledging the gentle rebuke that Tom is giving him. Or is he upset at being caught because he's still resistant to the rebuke and he's kind of still wanting to go, right? Either way. I think that works either way. My suspicion is the former. I don't think that Frodo is nearly so far gone that he's not shaken off the ring. The compulsion, suggestion, whatever it was, that led him to try to go out the door when he had the ring on. So yeah, I think that he's over it. And what's more, I think that the power of Bombadil's words, notice Tom Bombadil gives him commands, right? He speaks in the imperative mood. Come back, leave your game, and sit down beside me. 3 imperatives in a row Tom Bombadil gives him. Frodo's not going to keep going, and he doesn't, right? So yeah, I think that Tom Bombadil, my suspicion is that Tom Bombadil is able to kind of, jar him out of the whatever extent the ring was having its hold on him at that point. But that he's trying to sort of go along with Tom and laugh it off as a joke, but he knows it wasn't really a joke, right? He's trying to feel like, I had a joke on you guys and it worked, and that was really funny, right? We all think that was funny, right? We all think that was a good joke, right? This is a good joke. This is why I was doing that totally for a joke, right? And he doesn't believe that. He knows that that's not true. So I take that as disquiet about himself, right? Even uncertainty about, like, what just happened here, right? What just kind of came over me. Yeah. Now we have to be careful. A couple of you, such as Valori here, was sort of thinking that the ring might be freaked out by Tom. I don't know that we have much evidence to support that. One of the long-term questions we're trying to figure out here is, how much evidence is there to support the idea that the ring is sentient, right? That it is conscious and making plans. I don't see that here. The impulse that Frodo has to leave, to separate himself from his companions while he's wearing the ring, that's pretty vague, right? That's not a plan. exactly. I don't see any evidence there of a plan. I think that he's... So I don't see here evidence that the ring understands what was going on. Yeah. Because all we saw the ring do was tempt Frodo to put it on first, right? He was able to rationalize that. That kind of rationalization we've seen before, where the ring leads his mind into a plausible series of rationalizations. I need to confirm this is still my ring, right? Tom Bombadil's messing around with it, right? Throwing it up in the air and making it disappear. How do I know this is really my ring, right? That seems to be a pretty standard kind of ring rationalization for his for his putting on the ring. So this we've seen before. Frodo having the impulse to put the ring on. Once he has the ring on, we now see him, and we've not gotten there before. This is the first time he's put on the ring since chapter 2, right? So now we see for the first time what appears to be step 2, right? Step 1, the temptation to put on the ring. Step 2, leave, separate yourself from your companions, right? So that's, but all of those things seem like they could be fairly automatic. That doesn't suggest to me thought or planning on the ring's part there. But I'm not saying it disproves it, but I'm saying I don't see any real justification for that. I mean, as you can tell from the way I'm saying this, I think the burden of proof rests with people who want to argue that it is sentient. I think that a lot of people assume that it's sentient and read the text in that light, and you can kind of make that work. But I don't think that doesn't seem to me the right way to approach it. That's a pretty big leap to think that the ring is sentient and making plans. We need evidence to support that claim before we can really move forward with it, I think. And I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. We'll keep looking. Anyway, okay. What about Tom's comments on the weather? Especially in light, as you guys were just talking about, of Goldberry's washing day, right? I am no weather master, nor is aught that goes on two legs. Well, first of all, what does he mean by that? Once again, we find ourselves having the same conversation about Tom Bombadil. That is, what is meant by master here, right? What is a weather master? Notice it's another hyphenated word, right? Weather master is a special kind of master, right? So what is a weather master? What is the word in Tolkien's languages that is being translated by the English hyphenated phrase weather master, right? I think good, Ericab, that's great. Ericab points out that the weather can catch him, right? Goldberry, when Goldberry was defining Tom Bombadil's mastery, she was saying none has ever caught Tom, right? Well, the weather does catch him. That's true. Fair enough. Yeah, and several people are wondering different versions of the question. How many legs exactly does a water master have? Good, Tom. Tom points out that the rain doesn't fall on him, though. So does the rain actually catch him? Does the weather actually catch him? But Tom, I think that's a pretty good place to start, right? And if we think about it, if we think about it, there are a whole bunch of people on Twitter, in Discord. Half of you are still wanting to talk about the sentience of the ring. Stop. We're done with that for now. We're not done with it forever. We're going to come back to this again and again. We're going to come back to this literally dozens of times over the course of the book. Don't get ahead of things. Stop going off on, like, some of you are bringing in quotes and things from later on. Forget it, right? We'll get there. Long view, folks. Long view. We're going to look at these passages. We're going to look at every single passage in The Lord of the Rings. And from that, we will then be able to look back and build that case as we go. But we're done with that topic. We're talking about Weathermasters there, and I shan't be drawn. But Tom Hillman, just as you were saying, think back to the Weathermaster thing, right? Tom is not the master of the weather. He's no Weathermaster in the sense that he doesn't command the weather, right? The weather doesn't obey him, but the rain is not master of him either, right? He decides whether he wants to get wet or not. And he did not want to get wet, earlier this morning. So this shows, of course, him being master over him. The rain has no more power over him than the ring does, right? He is his own master, but he is not the Weathermaster. So what about Goldberry? I don't think there is. I don't think there's any necessary contradiction between the idea that if we consider the three facts, right? Fact number one, Goldberry appears to be causally related to the rain that's going on, right? Fact number two, Tom says nobody that has two legs is a Weathermaster, right? Fact three, Goldberry has two legs. Ergo, what do we do with these three facts? I don't, even if, and again, it's not 100% certain, but even if, as I believe, Goldberry is in fact causing the rain that's happening on the day before during her washing day, I don't think that necessarily means, I don't think that's a contradiction. I don't think that that's that means she's a Weathermaster, right? I think that being a Weathermaster means something else. Notice the context in which he talks about it. They would do well to start early, for weather in that country was a thing that even Tom could not be sure of for long, and it would change sometimes quicker than he could change his jacket. Tom doesn't determine the weather. Tom's not in charge of the weather, right? Remember the difference, again, the mastery issue with Goldberry's initial conversation with Frodo, right? Then all this, this forest belongs to him? Then, says Frodo? No, indeed, right? Causing rain on washing day is one thing. Being a Weathermaster, being in charge of the weather, scripting the weather, scheduling, like, and here is not the weather forecast, right? But the weather prescription for this week. That's not how Tom or Goldberry work, right? So yeah, I think that it's, and the changeability of it. Some of you, I think, are pointing very rightly to the fact that weather is a much more general phenomenon than, their focus is on this little patch, right, is on their little geographic region. And I agree, and I think that that's a factor. But again, Goldberry's washing day doesn't seem to me to be to me that sort of renders questionable the relevance of the specificity of the locale. I mean, we're not invited, I think, to imagine that in Goldberry's washing day there's a little cloud, like the kind of little cloud that might hover above Eeyore, right, and rain just down on them. I don't think that's the kind of I don't think that's the kind of thing that we're being invited to imagine here. So yeah, I think that we know that they can be impervious to the weather, like Tom not getting wet in the rain. We know that that Goldberry seems to be able to cause weather, but again, that's not the same thing as being a weather master. And again, Tom is talking about the predictability or the unpredictability of the weather and the changeability of the weather, right? These things can change really suddenly, and he's not in charge of it, right? So he can't tell them what's going to happen. Does that mean that if he set his will to it, he couldn't shield them from the weather if he chose to? I'm thinking he could, right? Like that's in his power. He's just not gonna. That's not how he rolls. So, yeah. Now, Harnuth, exactly, I agree with you. It is possible that Goldberry schedules washing day on the day that it does rain, and she doesn't even have to know in advance, right? They could wake up in the morning and say, like, hey, look at this. It's washing day today. I can't rule that out. So we can't prove that Goldberry causes the rain. But I think it's more likely than not, just given the way that they talk about it. Yeah. But anyway. But yeah, Mungli, why would he bother, giving them like a magic umbrella from rain or something like that? Again, I really don't... it's not shocking that he wouldn't act that way. But again, it's not what he's talking about. So again, I think to be a weather master, you would have to be somebody who is in charge of the weather, of the clouds and the airs and things like that. Manwë might be a weather master, right? But nobody that goes on two legs is a weather master. Now, I know you're all saying, well, how many legs does Manwë have? 0. He doesn't really have a body. But anyway. Yeah. Yes, and Kimber is right to remind us that the mastery of Tom Bombadil is associated more with knowledge and with familiarity, not with control, not with dominance, right? And I think Weathermaster, as he's describing it, that sounds like somebody, at the very least, who has perhaps a kind of dominance. But of course, Kimber, it's possible to understand that in the same way. Like, he doesn't have the same intimate knowledge of the weather that he has of, like, the willow trees and the badgers, right? He knows those things. He didn't tell weather stories, right? He doesn't know them. So yeah, I think that's yeah. Blue Wizard wants to know, can one put rain clouds to sleep? Well, Tom could, if anybody could, I'm sure. All right. The end of chapter 7. By his advice, they decided to make nearly due north from his house, over the western and lower slopes of the downs. They might hope in that way to strike the east road in a day's journey, and avoid the Barrows. He told them not to be afraid, but to mind their own business. Keep to the green grass. Don't you go a-meddling with old stone or cold whites or prying in their houses, unless you be strong folks with hearts that never falter. Strong folk. Oh, they're only one folk. He said this more than once, and he advised them to pass Barrows by on the west side, if they chanced to stray near one. Then he taught them a rhyme to sing, if they should by ill luck fall into any danger or difficulty the next day. Ho, Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo, by water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow, by fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. When they had sung this all together after him, he clapped them each on the shoulder with a laugh, and taking candles, led them back to their bedroom. Okay, let's look at his advice first, and then his verse that he teaches them. Okay. Yeah, JJ, I agree. It is really funny to say that they shouldn't go prying into the houses of the whites, which seems very conspicuous given the fact that the Barrow White was prying into his house in the poem. I agree that I think that's a funny kind of irony. So the east and west thing. That is, he says to pass barrows by on the west side if they chance to stray near one. There are two different ways to think about this, right? One is there's like the kind of bigger metaphysical way, and there's the smaller practical side, right? The bigger metaphysical way, of course, is the whole east-west thing, right? East is the direction towards Mordor from whence the shadows came, right? The evil spirits came and entered the Barrows. So there's that, and then the west, of course, is towards Valinor and off towards the capital W West. But there's also the just much more purely practical. It's going to be afternoon when they get to the Barrows, because in the morning they're not going to be close to any actual Barrows, right? So it'll be in the afternoon. So the west side will be the sunny side of the Barrows. Stay out of the shadows. If they pass on the east side of a Barrow in the afternoon, they're going to be going through the shadow of the Barrow. And that seems to be what he suggests that they should. So, I mean, honestly, of the two, I think the latter is the more likely. I think it's more about light and darkness, about sunlight and shadow, than it is about capital E East and capital W West. Lincoln, I agree, it does work both ways. But I do think that what happens with the whites later leads me to think it's mostly a sunlight and shadow issue that he's talking about here. Tom asks, it makes you wonder who Tom has known who came to a bad end by sticking his nose into a barrow, right? Yeah. Presumably there are some stories he could tell about that. Mike is suggesting maybe the door is on the east side. Possibly. Not sure about that. Not sure which direction the doors are oriented. Anyway, keep to the green grass as well. Don't you go a meddling with old stone. Which seems to be connected with what he just said about the green grass. Keep to the green grass. And remember, he's going to talk about the green grass again later on, right? The fact that they're going to be treading on or riding on the green grass in contact with living things is important. Don't walk on stony ground near the Barrows is another thing that he seems to be saying, right? Don't you go a meddling with old stone. Or cold whites, or prying in their houses. The way that he connects these together, old stone, because notice he doesn't say old stones, right? Like monoliths or standing stones, right? Presumably those would be included, but that's not what he says, right? He doesn't say stay away from standing stones. He says keep to the green grass, don't go a meddling with old stone. Don't walk on the rocks. Erocab, you're getting ahead of us there, but that is the passage, of course, that I'm thinking about with the sunlight and shadow thing. Kimber, it does seem to be more about keeping to the living stuff, being connected with the living instead of with the dead. The cold stone is connected, is associated with the whites directly. A meddling with old stone seems to be opposed to keeping to the green grass, and meddling with old stone is directly connected with meddling with cold whites, right? Coldness of the stone, the coldness of the white, the oldness of the stone and the coldness of the whites, right? Which rhymes, but is also, both of them, presumably both old and cold, right? Whereas the green grass is neither old nor cold. unless you be strong folk with hearts that never falter. So it's not certain death, but you don't want to mess with that. Yes, Oakwig is wondering if this is like the stoneworking elves being strange to Legolas. Oakwig, it's not just that. It's that the spirits of that stony realm, like the stony spirits of that realm, are of a kind strange to Legolas as well. So yeah, it's this like stone spirits themselves. Oakwig, it makes me think a lot about that passage actually. Yeah. Okay. Then we get the poem. The rhyme to sing. If they should by ill luck, notice, hyphenated word, ill luck, fall into any danger or difficulty. The first line invokes his name, right? And not just his name and the common nonsense rhyming version of his name, right? I think that Bombadillo is just as important as Bombadil in this case, right? Ho Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo. Notice that needless to say, they would be invoking his name in his own native poetic meter, but they're not just using his meter, right? They're using his whole atmosphere, right? Ho Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo that's a weird tone to adopt if you're in danger or difficulty, right? It's a strange, well, it's not strange. It partakes of sort of the lightness and frivolousness and merriment, chiefly, of Tom's verse, right? Sing some of my nonsense words, essentially. Valori says it's laughing at death. There's something like that. Yeah, I think there's an element of that. You're not only just saying his name, you are saying his name. Remember when they came to the house, the line that both Tom and Goldberry echoed, the last line of Tom's verse, the first line of Goldberry's verse, there at the end of chapter 6. Now let the fun begin. Let us sing together, right? There's a sense in which they're not only singing his name, they're singing with him, because this is the line that he always sings, and they're singing. It's like let the fun begin in the middle of whatever life-threatening situation, life-threatening, horrific situation you find yourself. It's time to crank up the fun again and re-invoke the merriment of Tom Bombadil's house. That seems to be, to me, sort of implicit in the Tom Bombadillo bit at the end. Yes, Matt, the powers by which he's invoked are a little bit odd as well. What are they supposed to invoke him by? By water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow. So let's just start with that line first. Water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow. What are these things? What are these things? These things are clearly Tom's realm, right? The water, wood, and hill, right? By the reed and willow, the plants that grow right along the Withywindle, right? We saw lots of reeds and we saw lots of willows. So we have water, wood, and hill being a fairly general description for this whole country, right? The old forest in general, the land that he's master of. Alia, I agree. Yes, good. Mike was just saying the same kind of thing there. The reed and willow, again, it more specifically seems to invoke the banks of the Withywindle, right? Kyle wants to know if reed corresponds to Goldberry. Not exactly, though she's connected with reeds, but not as much as she is with lilies, I don't see any direct invocation of Goldberry here necessarily. But again, it's the Old Forest in general, down by the Withywindle in particular, right? And yes, several of you are pointing out that there's no weather here, right? Because he's not master of the weather. By fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. These are different, right? Different kinds of categories of things. These are the ones that might be... The first line isn't all that surprising, right? By water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow. These are all sort of Tom Bombadilian things, right? That doesn't seem shocking. By fire, sun, and moon. Why by fire, sun, and moon? Yeah, JJ's wondering if he's calling on things that are greater than him. 3 sources of light, Valori, that does seem to be important, right? By fire, sun, and moon, so by light, essentially. Yeah, that's what I would tend to go for here. There are, as Matt and a couple other people were pointing out, there's a correlation with the elements here, right? The 4 basic elements, earth, air, water, and fire. In a sense, right? If you kind of associate sun and moon with air, all 4 elements are here, but this is clearly not an elemental invocation, right? We're clearly not marching our way through, earth, air, fire, and water here. We get some of those things, right? Like water and fire are lead off both of those 2 lines 2 and 3. But I do think that in that third line, the 2 things that seem to be important here are, this is something that's bigger. On the one hand, it's something that's bigger than Tom, something that's beyond. It's not something he's master of, right? Something which is above and sort of broader than his domain. But then also, I shouldn't say domain because that suggests dominion, right? His spot, right? But then also they're all associated with light. And yes, Finn, you're right that the ringwraiths are afraid of fire. We haven't learned that yet, but we will learn that, right? So Tom seems to be aware of that fact, that fire is going to be something that will be repellent to wraith and white type things. Yeah, the resistance of the darkness, we can think of that in larger, more thematic terms, like the secret fire, the sun and the moon, which of course recalls the light of the trees of Valinor. We get lots of, sort of big mythic resonances with all 3 of those things, fire, sun, and moon. And in a sense, to me, the fact that Finn was mentioning before that it's interesting that it's not like by stars, sun, and moon, which would seem to be a more natural set of 3, right? Yes, but if it said star, sun, and moon, it would merely be like, I'm invoking you by the heavens, right? By bringing fire in, it sort of, to me, it changes that up a little bit. It's not just about celestial bodies. It's about light, right? Sun and moon are primary sources of light. Fire is also a pretty major, a pretty major source of light. So yeah, I think that that's really the crucial thing. And yes, this is definitely a spell, as several of you have said. Is this an invocation? Is this a spell? Yes, this is a spell. It's a rhyme to sing. If they should fall into any danger or difficulty, this is a spell that they, so does this mean like he's teaching them a spell that they can cast? Casting spells is not exactly a thing that happens in Middle-earth, but this is an invocation. This is an incantation, and it will have power. They are invoking him by his name. and invoking him in the names of all of these other things, invoking him by the names of all of these things that he knows so well and of which he is the master, by these sources of light whose power is able to repel the shadow, right, and the creatures of shadow. And then the final imperative to which all of these things lead. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. Yeah. Yeah, JJ says, do they have to ready this spell, or do their classes cast spontaneously? That's exact. Yeah, it's more of a spell-like ability. JJ is really what we're talking about here. No, I think it's unlimited times per day, but you'll tick him off if you do it. Not that I can you imagine Tom Bombadil ticked off? That's actually kind of funny, that whole concept. But yes, music has power. Harnuth names have power. And anytime you're doing this kind of an invocation, I invoke this person's name in rhyme, in song, especially in a song that's been given to me by this person for the sake of calling for help. It's pretty clear that I don't think that this necessarily gives them the power to summon him, right? This is not... this doesn't mean they can whistle up Tom. What this means, I think, is that they can call to them. Exactly, Matt, as Matt was just pointing out, very appropriately, that I skipped the action bit. By fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us, right? That's the end of the invocation, right? By all these things, in the name of all these things by which I am invoking you, hearken now and hear us. And then here's what I'd like you to hear, Tom Bombadil. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And yes, Valori, absolutely. This is it is like a spell to call on a guardian. There are definitely fairy tale resonances with this kind of thing. Yeah, why don't they write this down so they'll remember it? You don't need to write it down, right? They need to have it. They need to have it in their hearts, right? It needs to come from their hearts. It's not something you can read off a scroll, right? Doesn't work that way. This has to be a song that they have, right? A song that they know. Besides, writing it down, the more you write stuff down, the worse your memory gets, right? They need to know it. They need to learn it. Clearly. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop indulging at the Dungeons and Dragons vocabulary about this. But yeah, exactly, Emma Thorne. That's it. If you have a hard time remembering this, it's because you've never tried. And Emma Thorne is exactly right. Think about the fact that, how many of you can right now tell me, the phone numbers of your best friends, right? I bet you don't know them. I don't remember I might be able to come up with my mom's phone number. If I tried, I know I couldn't come up with my dad's phone number. I don't even know anymore because it's in the memory of my phone, right? It remembers it for me, so I don't have to remember it. And my memory my memory for such things is getting worse as a consequence. This is a thing that happens. This was an objection to writing way back. Aristotle talked about this. Aristotle was anti-writing, not entirely, but he was, the whole idea of the written word, it comes at a cost. If you write things down all the time, your memory is going to get bad. So anyway, yeah. Anyhow, keep this in mind whenever people talk about the shift to an internet culture and how this is corrupting our society. Just remember, people said the same thing about the printing press and about writing, about literacy in the first place. This is, and I'm not saying that any of those things are wrong. I'm just saying, This is always the kind of discussion that happens. It's all in Aristotle, Tom. Exactly. What do they teach them in these schools these days? Yeah. You're right, D. Schwab. They would. Tom would have just given them the Tom Bombadil app to summon him in the modern era. Yeah, swipe right for Tom and swipe left for Goldberry. Yeah, exactly. All right. So they sing it, and when they sing it, they have it, right? And he claps them on the shoulder with a laugh and leads them back to their bedroom. Okay, and we have come to the end of chapter 7, so let's look at the vision. That night they heard no noises, but either in his dreams or out of them, he could not tell which, Frodo heard a sweet singing running in his mind, a song that seemed to come like a pale light behind a grey rain curtain, and growing stronger, to turn the veil all to glass and silver, until at last it was rolled back, and a far green country opened before him under a swift sunrise. The vision melted into waking, and there was Tom, whistling like a tree full of birds, and the sun was already slanting down the hill and through the open window. Outside, everything was green and pale gold. Frodo has another dream, right? Now, yes, of course, this is the famous place from which Peter Jackson transplanted the line about the far green country under a swift sunrise, which, of course, in the film is talking about death. And I mean, those of you who have been listening to me for a while know that I object to simply purist objections to the film, simply, objecting to something simply because it's changed from the films or from the books. I do dislike the transplanting of that line to Gandalf reassuring Pippin about what death is going to be like, because there's some pretty serious metaphysical confusion going on there, I think. But I don't want to worry about that. Let's focus on what this says right here. First of all, first important thing to note, this is not necessarily a dream, right? This is a vision that he has, and it is a vision that is consequent upon his hearing a sweet singing running in his mind. Who's singing is that? I don't know. Is it Goldberry singing? Is it Tom singing? Probably not Tom. Tom's music is not usually, his singing is not usually described as sweet. Could it be Goldberry singing? Possible it could be Goldberry singing. Is it somebody else's singing? Is it Tin Fang Warble singing? I don't know. But it's some kind of singing that he hears running through his mind, right? Which I don't think there's a reason, therefore, there's a compelling reason to say that this is an actual singing that he's hearing coming from out the window, right? I don't think that's... it's running in his mind, meaning it could come from it. This could be a dream, after all, right? Could he be hearing the music of the Ainur? Matthew Herschenroder's asking. Possibly. Look at the description of the song. A song that seemed to come like a pale light behind a gray rain curtain, and growing stronger to turn the veil all to glass and silver, until at last it was rolled back, and a far green country opened before him under a swift sunrise. Now notice the description of the vision, the visible description of the vision that he has begins as a metaphor to describe the sound of the song, right? These two things are one. In a sense, he does not literally have a vision. It's not like he's just given a picture, has a dream in which he opens his eyes and he sees a veil, and the veil is rolled back and he sees a far green country open before him under a swift sunrise. Oops, sorry. That's not what is described as happening here at all. He hears a song, and the song is like a light behind the curtain. The song is the light. It's not the curtain, right? So the veil, the gray rain curtain, which is also then compared to a veil, right? And notice, by the way, notice what Tolkien does here. Simile and metaphor. You know the difference between simile and metaphor, right? Really, really simple thing, right? Simile is when you use the word like or as, and metaphor is when you don't. I remember when I first learned that. I think it was in 10th grade English, and I thought it was really dumb. I'm like, that's stupid. It's doing the same thing. Like, okay, so it's like ways to compare something to something else. But it seemed to me a really hair-splitting distinction to make between a simile and a metaphor. Like one uses like and as and one doesn't, so what? But I've come to see that there is really a significant difference between a simile and a metaphor. Because a simile draws attention to the fact that it is a comparison, right? The metaphor really just combines the two things in one single image. It doesn't. A simile presents you with two things, right? A song that seemed to come like a pale light behind a gray rain curtain, right? So the simile presents us with two things. The song, right, on the one hand, and we were told that it is like a pale light behind a gray rain curtain. Notice when he shifts, when he sort of modulates from simile to metaphor, which is what he does next, right? He's making the same comparison, but notice how it sounds different. He doesn't present us with the two things anymore. Now he just blends the two things in a metaphor, and growing stronger to turn the veil all to glass and silver, right? That veil, which is the gray rain curtain now, but there's no more like or as, right? We've shifted from simile to metaphor. Can you think of another prominent place where that exact thing happens, right? A thing starts off as a simile, and then a couple sentences later, the same comparison is made in a metaphor. Erecheb got it in one, the wings of the Balrog. First, it's a simile that the shadow that spreads out behind him is like a pair of wings, and then a couple sentences later he says his wings, right? Meaning the shadow, which is like wings. Metaphor instead of simile. Anyway, yeah, exactly, Lincoln. It's a classic example, but that's it's a pattern that we can see in several places in the way that Tolkien makes these comparisons. Anyhow, okay, but I'm not trying to just turn this into a proof that Balrogs don't have wings. So yeah. Anyway, the song is the light. The song is not the curtain, right? The curtain is the thing behind which the pale light. So again, what is the comparison? What comparison is it made? So hearing the song is like seeing a pale light through a gray curtain of rain, right? Well, rain curtain, hyphenated phrase, right? And the light grows stronger and turns that veil so that at first it seems like the gray rain curtain, it's gray, right? And the light is only pale. So you've got this faint light, this faint and presumably colorless light, but it's being obscured by the veil. So it's like he can't hear the song very clearly, or it's not getting to it. It's very faint. It's sweet, right? But it's only faintly coming to him, and there's like some barrier between him and it. But then notice what happens. The barrier itself is transformed. Just as a veil of water, right? When the light behind it grows stronger, now the veil, the water is no longer just muting the light. The water itself is transformed by the light, and the veil is turned all to glass and silver. Right. So, okay. So the song is like that. First, the song seems to be, it's like that pale light shining through a gray rain curtain, but then it transforms that barrier. So what is the barrier, right? The barrier between Frodo and the song. right? The thing that was muting, but whatever it is, the limitation of his vision, the I don't know, something about his own mind and his ability to perceive this. I don't know, but that barrier itself is transformed, right? All to glass and silver by the light, by the song. And then the veil, right, that thing separating them is rolled back and he sees something. So this, again, remember, this is all a comparison for him hearing the song. Just as when the veil comes back, he sees the light, or rather he sees the source of the light. Before, all he could see was a light, right? Now he sees the scene itself from which the light was shining. And that scene is a far green country opening up before him under a swift sunrise, right? That's what the pale light was coming from. So again, the pale light seen through the gray rain curtain is only an indicator of the thing to come, right? It's only the light like reflecting off of the country. Does this remind Tom Hillman, I'm sure you're thinking of Plato's cave, like I am at this moment, the whole like shadow of a shadow and the different removes of things, right? It's kind of like that. His relationship with it at first reminds me of that. That first, all he perceives in that sweet song that he hears, all he perceives is a muted version, like a veiled version of only the light that's bouncing off this country, right? He doesn't see the picture at all. And then that separation itself becomes beautiful, becomes itself a marvel and a wonder. Then it is parted and he sees the country itself. He sees, again, thinking about, it's all in Plato, Tom, right? What do they teach them in these schools? He sees the real thing, right? The real thing that underlies. And again, it's about the song. The whole thing is a metaphor for the song and Frodo's reception of the song. So the source of the pale light is the far green country that opened before him under a swift sunrise. Now, what is that? I don't know what that is, right? Not only do I not know that is death, right? As the movie suggests. Is it Elvenhome? Is it Valinor? Right? Is he having a vision of the West? We don't know. We have no way of knowing that. I mean, apart from the references to the West that we've gotten, the idea that the elves are sailing off to somewhere, we've been given the concept of Elvenhome. But this doesn't seem to me anything so concrete as that. There's certainly nothing in the description to suggest that this is in the West, right? I mean, notice it's a sunrise, not a sunset. Sunset would make us think West, right? It's a sunrise, and a swift sunrise. By the way, that's I love that phrase, swift sunrise. I'm much more inclined to agree with those of you, Grimmered and James Stevens and a couple others, who are thinking that this is more metaphorical, right? It is a metaphor, after all, right? And remember what it's a metaphor of. Remember what the far green country opening before him under a swift sunrise is a metaphor of, right? Directly, within the context of this one long sentence, right? It is a metaphor of what he receives from the song, of what the song is about. He's not even being given a vision exactly, right? It's called a vision after the fact. The vision melted into waking, right? So we do get this kind of blurring of the lines between the auditory and the visual. But again, it's all about the song. and he sort of perceives the song. He comes to perceive the song visually, it seems, right? And yes, Galandar, I agree. Frodo would have no reason to associate this vision with Valinor. Now, again, I'm not ruling out that it is, right? And we may see this connected in other ways later on. But right now, it's just metaphorical. What started as a sweet singing in his mind, a sweet singing that was like the pale light behind the gray curtain, is revealed to him. And the essence of that singing is a far green country under a swift sunrise. Now, I can't help but remember the reference to the green grass, right? The keep to the green grass in Tom's advice, just in the previous paragraph, right? That is this association with life and living, right? That it's a green country. It's not a land of old stones and cold whites, not a land of death. It's clearly a land of life, but it's a far green country, right? There's a remoteness to it. There's a distance to it. It does open before him, right? But it doesn't just open all around him. He's not there. He's seeing it from a distance, right? It's a far green country under a swift sunrise. So under a sunrise, right, meaning, again, beginnings, right? It's a morning. This is a morning vision, not an evening vision. So new life, new hope, but it's a swift sunrise. Why is the sunrise swift? I think the swiftness of the sunrise suggests the distance framework of this place that he's seeing / hearing is far, right? It's a far country. The swift sunrise would seem to suggest a wonky relationship with time as well. What he's having a vision of is something that it's like he's not seeing it in real time, or like its own relationship with time is a little bit different. It speaks to me of something remote and therefore mythic, and in some sense timeless, but not static, right? It's not like a place where the sun is just hanging in the sky and time never passes. The sun is moving swiftly there. So what exactly is this a metaphor of? Who's singing? And what is the person singing? And D. Schwab asks, is it perpetually under swift sunrise? We don't know. It's only a glimpse that he gets, right? So we don't know that this land is unchanging or that the sun is always rising there, right? We're not told anything like that. It doesn't seem that this vision / song lasts for a long time, right? We don't really know that. It seems to be a glimpse. What's the purpose of it? Remember that we were saying before, when we were talking about his dream in Crickhollow, the dream, the Tower by the Sea dream. We were speculating that this was a dream that was being sent to him. We were speculating that again when he was having his Gandalf dream just the night before this in the House of Tom Bombadil. With the Tower by the Sea dream, we were in particular thinking this sounded like an Olmo dream. You got the sound of the sea in there, which he'd never heard before and which affected him strongly. And you get anyway. So, there were several things that were sort of, and it seemed to be a hope dream, right? How his fear dream was transformed into a hope dream. He gets another hope dream that he seems to misunderstand as he reinterprets his hope dream in a fearful context, right? Taking the galloping of what I think are probably Shadowfax's hooves for the hooves of the Black Riders instead. Here, this is, Mike, I agree, a much more pleasant dream than the last one. But it's also the main thing that I would take from this. It is an explicitly sent vision, right? We were suggesting that dream in Crickhollow was being sent to him by somebody, right? Probably one of the Valar. This seems like an Olmo kind of thing to do. This is explicit. He's not just dreaming of this. He's not just having, it might be happening in a dream, but that's irrelevant, right? There is a sweet singing running in his mind that he's hearing, right? It might be in his dreams. It might be out of these dreams. He can't tell which, and it doesn't really matter, right? Someone is singing, and this vision is the song that he is receiving, right? And Emma Thorne says, I think it's Frodo's own mind conjuring up these images. Well, yes. Just like, remember the Gildor song translated itself in their own heads, right? I do think that's what the simile and metaphors, this whole simile to metaphor thing that we were just looking at, I think that's what that sort of translates to here, right? His mind is taking in this song. This song is affecting his mind and his heart. And it takes shape in his mind as this vision of the far green country under a swift sunrise. But that is, in a sense, his own mind and heart responding to this song that's being sung to him, right? JJ says he doesn't know if the vision is in the body or out of the body. God knows. Yes, exactly, JJ. Frodo and St. Paul. But again, the point is, this is explicitly sent by somebody. There is a singer whose song Frodo is hearing here. And we have no idea who it is. I don't think it's Tom or Goldberry. I just don't think it's Tom or Goldberry. This doesn't sound like the kind of thing that Tom or Goldberry would sing about. So I don't know. Now, Arthur asks exactly the right question. What is the purpose of this vision? Like, what seems to be its function? And we were looking at like hope and fear and that kind of thing with the previous dreams. What is it kind of, what's the overall sort of thrust of it, right? And I agree with you, Arthur, mere encouragement doesn't seem to be enough. The last dream, the Gandalf dream, is an encouraging dream. Don't worry about Gandalf. Like, A, he's okay. Don't worry about him. Second, things were not good, but he escaped, right? And secondly, don't worry, he's coming, right? Don't despair. That seemed to be encouragement, Arthur, exactly as you say. This is not just encouragement. A far green country under a swift sunrise. That's not a buck up little camper kind of vision that he's getting, right? So, yeah, Fourth Dauntless is suggesting it brings Estelle. Perhaps, though even there it's not super clear, like, high hope in what, exactly? It's not exactly a theological dream, right? It is, Marianne, it's kind of like Sam's vision of the star. I mean, of course, that's what I'm thinking of, but it's also kind of not like that. I mean, maybe, okay, like, in the sense that Sam's vision of the star in Mordor, to jump ahead 5 years or whatever it's going to be, Sam's vision of the star in Mordor is a vision that there is, high beauty that the shadow cannot touch. Is that the purport? That kind of thing? Is that the purport of Frodo's vision? Is that what the song's about? High beauty that the shadow can't touch? I tend to not think so. And the thing that makes me not think so is the veil. The gray rain curtain, right? This is not about dark shadows concealing something, but then getting a glimpse of what's beyond the shadows and realizing that the shadows are just a small and passing thing. Again, that's Sam's vision. That's not Frodo's vision here. The vision of the far green country under the swift sunrise is obscured initially by a gray rain curtain, but notice that gray curtain becomes a shimmering veil turned all to glass and silver by that light itself. Right? The veil becomes part of the wonder and beauty of this vision. It's not the shadow that merely seeks to obscure and overwhelm or block out the light. So in that way, I don't see the message of this vision being the same as Frodo's message. Yeah. Yeah, Bookspecs is wondering, is it something like a step into fairy? It's almost it's like that in some ways. Seeing this veil open up and what he sees as a country, right? A beautiful country. Yeah. But exactly, Tom. Tom says it's already in fairy, right? The whole transformation of the gray rain curtain into the glass and silver veil. Yeah. What if... Let's go back to hope, as hope has been a theme in his dreams so far. I'm still thinking about hope and fear. Because, fear, his fear, and not just his fear, but his sufferings, his hardships, the stuff, right, that he's in the middle of right now. Whether it be the Barrow-Downs tomorrow or the ring wraiths the day after that, right? These things are like the gray rain curtain, which is obscuring whatever is the source of the pale light. The far green country is this, again, it's remote, but it's living and has a different relationship with time, right? So let's just call it, for now, let's say timeless, time separate, right? And living and remote. But there's a veil between him and it. And the veil is at first gray, a gray rain curtain, which is an obscuring curtain. All he can see is the pale light. He can't see the country at all. Then it opens up and he can see the country. But the thing that interests me most about the vision, and what I keep coming back to, is the transformation of the curtain into the veil of glass and silver. If it's about hope and fear, the things that surround you, the things that obscure this vision of hope, this Estelle destination of like that which lies before you, if the fears, hardships, sufferings, and difficulties that he is in the midst of right now are like a gray rain curtain through which only a pale light of what is to come, of that hope that he can have, shines through. But that suffering and fear and difficulty is itself transformed by that light into something wondrous and beautiful before it opens, before it rolls back and reveals that country. See what I mean there? I don't know if I'm right to say this, but it seems to me that the key to understanding, the key to applying this vision to Frodo's life, to Frodo's situation, it seems to me that the key is in the transformation of that curtain. That's what I keep coming back to. Yeah, Tom is asking, is it everything in this world? That we, the things that we see now, in a glass darkly, right? Possibly. Maybe it is the whole mortal world, which is first transformed into a veil of glass and silver and then rolled back to reveal the far green country under a swift sunrise. Maybe. Matt's asking if I can see it as something like the barrier that separates Valinor from Middle-earth. Sci-Fi Ramen was just saying the same thing on Twitter there as well. Possibly. Again, two things. First, I'm resistant to simply identifying the far green country under a swift sunrise with Valinor because we have, as yet, no reason necessarily to think that. Again, that's not to say that it isn't or can't be, but making a firm identification of that here, we don't have the data for that. So I'm a little resistant to drawing an equal sign there. But the barrier... See, thinking of a barrier between Middle-earth and Valinor, and Tom, of course, I agree, since Valinor has been removed from the world and it's only by the straight path of the Lost Road that you can get there anymore, that would seem to create a different kind of situation, right? But I don't see it working. And the transformation, I don't really... Again, the transformation of the curtain into the glass and silver veil doesn't seem to me to work as talking about the boundary or the barrier between Middle-earth and Valinor. Now, Kimber wants us to remember, and I think he makes a good point. We have to look how the vision melts into waking. The vision melted into waking, and there was Tom whistling like a tree full of birds, and the sun was already slanting down the hill and through the open window. Outside, everything was green and pale gold. Now, Fourth Dauntless has just pointed out that everything is green and silver in his vision, and then when he wakes up, everything is green and gold, right? Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that either. Fourth Dauntless. Yeah, not sure what to make of that. Kimber, yeah, it says that there's your green country under a swift sunrise. Right. But it's not literally that, right? I mean, that would be kind of pathetic, wouldn't it? Be like a far green country opened before him under a swift sunrise. And it turns out it's the hill behind Tom's house, right? It's like, well, okay, yeah. I mean, Tom's house is cool, but it's not that cool. That seems to me something along the line of a joke or a pun, almost, if you see what I mean, right? Yes, like, he looks out the window and what does he see? He sees a green country under a sunrise, which, if not actually swifter than usual, is at least has been kind of swift in the sense that they've missed it, right? Notice the sun is slanting down the hill, so it's well past dawn, right? The sun is not only risen above the horizon, it's risen up so that it shines down the hill. So it's like, mid-morning already. So this sunrise has been swift from their point of view because they slept through it. But again, that sounds to me more like joke isn't exactly right, because that makes it sound frivolous, and I don't mean it to be frivolous at all. I'm not denying, because I think it's important, that there is a real connection. And Kimber, I'm with you. Joy and hope and the support of the gods are here and now, not in a vision or somewhere distant. I agree, Kimber. There's a sense of, it's not just a pun. It's not just like it's a play on it. It's like an application, right? That far green country under the swift sunrise is there, right? At least in part. Now, Galandar says, isn't this a situation like the dream at Crickhollow where the light Frodo sees is Merry's candle? No. 2 reasons. First of all, the light and the thunder that ominously interrupt the Crickhollow dream turn out to be Merry knocking at the door and holding his candle, right? But the sound and the light were an invasion in the dream. He's having the vision, and it's interrupted by what he hears within the vision first as thunder and a flash of light, right? And then he wakes up and realizes that it's Merry with his candle. The far green country is the essence of, it's not an interruption of his dream or vision. It is the essence of his dream or vision. And then he sees something which is like a cognate to it outside the window, right? There is a glimpse of, or a version of, or an anticipation of that far green country under a swift sunrise right outside the window in Tom Bombadil's backyard, right? So in that way, I think it's not the same, but that's well remembered. I think thinking about that helps to clarify that relationship, I think. No, okay. The word I'm looking for, you guys are trying to help me find the word I'm looking for. Joke is not right. Pun is closer. That is to say, what I'm doing is making an analogy, right? A play on words, or a play on words is like the relationship between the green and pale gold vista out between Tom's backyard and the far green country, right? They're not the same thing, but they are like each other. Something almost, it's not a type exactly, JJ, but maybe you could go typology here. Yeah. Yeah, Matt's pointing out the hope that grows out of knowing that there is a better ideal and idealized place, that there is this reality. There's hope is not vague, right? Hope is not indistinct. Again, like that idea of seeing past the curtain into the like platonic reality, like perceiving the real. That vision of hope is not just a things might work out and be okay, Frodo. It's this is reality, right? And then he sees it. Yeah, sort of like harmony, Matt. No, it's more like rhyme. It's like rhyme. Tom's backyard rhymes with the far green country under a swift sunrise. You see what I mean? That's the kind of thing that I'm trying to get out there. That I'm trying to get at there. Several of the other terms that you guys are throwing out are also a little bit like it, but I'm not finding what I'm really looking for is a metaphor or an analogy, and I'm not thinking of the perfect one. But it's something like rhyme. It's something like a type. Yeah. Yeah. Tony says, I like the idea that the powers are showing Frodo that their country is nice but far away, but that they are with him. Yeah. Something along those lines. Yeah. 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 Tillian, I think I'm going to stick with rhyme. I think that's the, but again, there's a sense in which it's almost like an instance of that idea. Maybe I'll go back to Plato, right? Tom's backyard is a shadow of that reality, right? Shadow is a Platonic word, but it's kind of an unfortunate word to use in a Tolkien context. He wakes up and the veil is back again, right? He's seeing through the veil. It is like an echo, Mungly, yes. But it's not just a recollection or something that's similar to it. It is an adumbration of that thing. Echo works. Echo is okay. Reflection, Galandar, that's a little bit more Platonic, right? Yeah. Mad Violinist and Matt are thinking about resonance and resonating. That it resonates with and you're right, Tom, and echo is a reflection. Yeah, I think we're getting there. I also think we should probably stop because it's getting late. Yeah. I love this passage. This is one of those passages. Which, when you look at it closely, kind of blows your mind, right? Who was singing to Frodo? We're not told, right? But somebody's singing to him, and I don't think it's Goldberry, right? Somebody's singing to him, and we don't know whom. We're being deliberately not told. He's been given this clearly momentous vision, but we're not told of what. We're not told how it affects him, right? We can't even judge the purport of the vision by its impact on Frodo, because we're not really told what its impact on Frodo was. Exactly. Tom Hillman says, this is when I say that 9 sessions is much too short a time to spend in the House of Tom Bombadil. Next time, we will get to actually saying goodbye and setting off from the house. So we will be starting on the road towards the Barrow-Downs next week. I always have to pause. I'm like, wait, am I going to be home next week? I'm pretty sure I'll be home next week. Next week is Halloween. Yeah, I'll be home. It is Halloween. I'm still going to have class because I'm not on trick-or-treating duty. That is... traditionally, back in the old days, when I used to live in Delaware, I was the giver out of candy at the door. That was my job. My wife always did the take the kids around to pillage other people's homes, and I was the fend people off with candy from our house person. But our house is situated on a very lonely road, and I bought candy the first couple of years we lived here, but nobody ever comes to our house, so I just have kind of given up on that. So I'm going to be home, and therefore, why not have class? So I'm going to plan to have class, even though it's Halloween next week. I understand if you won't be able to be here because you're Halloweening in one way or another, but we're gonna continue on towards the Barrow-Downs because hey, Barrow-Downs, right? That's a pretty Halloweeny kind of subject, so that'll all be good. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to say goodbye to the folks on Twitter, and I'm going to shift over to just the Twitch channel because it's time for our field trip in game tonight. So thanks, Twitter folks. All right. And we're going to... It's time to stretch, everybody. All right. Whew. All right. I gotta get the blood moving again here after long lecturing. Okay. So we're gonna go back to the North Downs, as I've been really enjoying doing our. As you can tell, I really like doing systematic tours through things. So, I'm wanting to do the completionist field trip here. So that's what we're going to do. All right. So we're just going to ride out again. We don't need to stable master. Those of you who are low level.
Like me, I will need protection.
Exactly. So yeah, we've got. I see we've got several people who can do some protecting here, so we'll be fine. All right, so let's head out to. We can kind of gather up again at the intersection of the Greenway and the East Road. Meet up at the crossroads again.
Oh right, why am I on foot? Ugh.
Oh. All right.
Gotta put my smell the roses on. I keep forgetting.
All right. Yeah, so Brandon asks, are we going to ignore Tom's advice to not poke around the Barrow-Downs? Absolutely, we are ignoring that advice. Yeah, though I can't promise that low-level people won't be killed when we do so,
Yeah, that one would be, especially if we go inside them,
Yeah, some people might come to grief if we go messing with old stone and cold whites.
Also, empty your inventory before we do so.
Yes. All right. So we'll wait here for a few minutes, and we're just going to ride back north again. We'll go back to Trestle Bridge, which is where we went before. Oh, some beautiful stars out tonight. Uh-huh. There's the Sickle of the Valar up in the north.
It's the plow.
Oh, well, it's the plow. That's true.
Actually, I was telling my kids about the different constellations, but there still are constellations in Tolkien's world. And we were looking for the meteors. We didn't see any, but we had fun trying to make up our own constellations for our elves.
Yes.
So that was fun.
That's cool.
I'm so happy your kid's into Nightfall.
Oh man, it's the best. It's the best.
I have to wait for my kids to get sick of Halloween music.
Yeah. We the unanimous favorite is The Curse of Fëanor. We all love The Curse of Fëanor. It's all of our favorite song. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, let's head north.
Do you have the acapella B-side they did? I think of about Hurin or Turin. I think it was Hurin. They were singing it from Hurin's point of view, and I think it was a metal cover or it was a rejected track or a deep cut or something like that. But Rachel had it and she said it was from Nightfall on Middle Earth, but it was harder to get one.
The version I have that we've been listening to is the one I bought on iTunes, so I think it might be included in that.
Yeah, if it's the digital archive might have it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, this is Rachel. She had to trade 25 burnt CDs from various people in Scandinavian countries or whatever. I don't know.
Yes.
Now she's slapping herself, probably.
Yeah.
That's my favorite track on the whole album. It's the deep cut about her.
Yes.
Although I can't listen to it while driving, I get all teary and I crash.
Right. Similarly, when I listen to The Curse of Fëanor while driving, I end up going about 30 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Yeah, that's always the problem with metal.
It's a serious
great for the
problem.
passenger and terrible for the driver.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm one of those. Yeah, I'm one of those heretics that is always singing metal in my head anyway while I'm doing quests and stuff like that. That and all the prog rock stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That the Lady Hawk soundtrack, Labyrinth soundtrack. That was my jam.
Right. Right.
That's how I saw fantasy probably until 2000.
Right.
2000.
Right.
Then I think learned things could be orchestral and sweeping and epic.
Right. Right. So Howard Shore changed your mind, is what you're saying?
Yeah, he did. Howard Shore and Thomas Chan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tony says he just downloaded the Blind Guardian album from Apple Music. Yeah, it's totally worth it, man. It's totally worth it. Really interesting. I find, many of I mean, just even thinking of it, first of all, like, I'm in love with the concept. I mean, just anybody saying we're going to do like a narrative album, touching on like major like themes and events from the Silmarillion. I mean, what's not to love about that concept?
Yeah.
But even apart from that, it's dang, I see Pine Leaf is very kindly helping to de-wolf the countryside as we go through here.
Thank you, Pine Leaf.
Anyway, yeah. So I love the concept, but even just thinking of it as an adaptation, it's really interesting to see what they're doing in the lyrics of their songs. That's what my son and I are gonna be discussing primarily, sort of thinking about the themes of the...
That's actually how I found you guys. I was listening. Rachel was playing it in her car, and I was asking her all about it. And she's like, "Oh, it's about the Silmarillion." And I'm like, "Well, I never finished that book. I'm not that big a Tolkien fan." And then she started going in all the points that you did when you were dissecting it.
Right, in the Silmarillion seminar.
And then she started playing. Hey, let me introduce you to this guy, his podcast, and what he's doing, and about the new Hobbit movies that are coming out, and the predictions they're making. And that's how this whole thing started. She was playing Nightfall in Middle Earth.
There you go. There you go.
It's like the Rainbow Connection.
That's right.
Electric guitars. So I'm hoping you will be recording the podcast because I will have to listen.
Oh, definitely.
It not live, but
definitely.
We always have our meetings on Saturday. We always say we're like, and we're gonna go in Lord of the Rings afterwards and play stuff, or we're gonna open up that D&D campaign we started last year.
Right.
And it never happens. Work just keeps going.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we are across the trestle span, and we're going to head north here because I don't want to go into Nanwethrin, which is the big orc camp, because that would be far too dangerous for lower level people, and it's a little bit low yield anyway. I mean, it's kind of interesting as a like study of orc culture to some extent, but it's a big old orc camp.
And not quite where we are. We'll have plenty of opportunity to study orc culture later.
Exactly.
Man, how fast is this horse?
I think a bunch of people stopped in Trestlebridge back there.
Yeah, I know. It's all the people who got the new horses are all just sitting there going, "Why are we leaving everyone in the dust right now?" These are good horses, I gotta say.
All
Probably
right.
so you could run away from the even deadlier mobs they got up there.
Okay. I'll wait here at the junction as we're leaving the Greenway. Look at that, a little pine leaf on foot keeping up with the horses.
Aww.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, I don't know how pine leaf that.
All right. There goes our last few. Okay, so this is a spot that we've gotten to the last couple times. There's Emon Reith up on the hilltop there. Or Emon Reith, I suppose, is the hilltop. Okay. All right. So now we're going to go back to thinking about it's ruin spotting time. We're going back to thinking about the Kingdom of Arnor, and remember, as we've shifted from Evendim and we've moved east into the North Downs, we are moving forward in history from the old Kingdom of Arnor in the time of the first 9 or 10 kings, down to up to the section which of course Fornost, right up this road here where we went before through the Deadland, is which we can just see kind of actually sort of cool as a cool silhouette in front of the stars there. A shadow in front of the stars is the ruin of Fornost, which was the capital of Arthedain and the military center. But this land is the beginning of this sort of contested land. The Kingdom of Arthedain stretched through here. But we are very much in the time frame of the three different divided kingdoms, Arthedain and Rhudaur and Cardolan. Now we know that Cardolan was you primarily find them south of Bree. And the primary geographic location with which they were associated was the Barrow-Downs. It was on the Barrow-Downs that the people of Cardolan made their last stand before they kind of got wiped out. So, but Rhudaur was kind of the biggest problem. Rhudaur were the ones that really defected over to Angmar, to serve Angmar. Okay, so here we are. We're heading north and east through the North Downs, up the steep hills, and at the top of this, down right there's the watchtower, Emon Reith over there, which we saw earlier. Now we have Minas Vrun. Now, let's check out this symbol.
Huh. Iron Crown.
Looks like an iron crown, doesn't it? But of course it's also, and this is much clear, you can see this much more clearly when this is on a colored banner. Those are also trees with dark or bloody shadows underneath them. This is a forest, which also does look uncoincidentally like a crown. These trees arrayed in this shape like a crown, and you'll notice the symbol up above at the top of the arches, and that I take to be the scepter of Enuminus. So the scepter of Enuminus, which is of course the symbol of rulership of the entire Kingdom of Arnor. So this woodland crown image is the symbol of Rhudaur, and which of course you can figure out because Rhudaur, it means the name it refers to woods, to forests. It's in the name, so it makes sense, and of course the sort of resonance between the tree symbol here and the fact that it does look like exactly, Valoria, it's the first thing I always think of too when I see it, is it looks like an iron crown, right? But it's actually trees forming an iron crown, and again that strikes me as very interesting and significant, right? Because of course Rhudaur allied itself with Angmar, and it didn't just do this randomly, right? The way that this happened was the people of Rhudaur were mingled with the hillmen. So there are these non-Numenorian peoples that live up in this region, kind of like the Brelanders, right? Who are also non-Numenorian people who were native to this region. But the hillmen that were up on the outskirts of Angmar had already sworn allegiance to Angmar. That's the problem. So, they have these hillmen with ancestral Angmarim loyalties with which they become merged, so that the Dunedain sub-kingdom of Rhudaur soon becomes a pawn of the kingdom of Angmar.
Yeah.
And associated with the Iron Crown. So this whole image of like a forest, which is, you know, a nice and wholesome organic living symbol, but how the forest has itself like merged into this image of an Iron Crown, you know, it just seems to me like a very apt symbol for Rhudaur.
That was another thing he was being a puppet with, you know.
Exactly. And again, I take the scepter, which of course is right above the Rhudaur symbol, right, that we see in each one of these arches, that to be, you know, a sort of non-subtle hint, right, that the people of Rhudaur see themselves as the
true leaders.
The true leaders, exactly. The true heirs, the rightful rulers of Arnor as a whole. So if we look at the map and where we are, this is interesting because this ruin, if this is a Rhudauran ruin, we're quite close to Fornost. You know, you can see that one of the things that it suggests, which I think is borne out in the way that when we read about the Dunedain civil wars, the boundaries are kind of uncertain, right? Because I mean, this is, you know, what happened was not the Arnorian civil wars. It wasn't a regional thing. You know, it wasn't like the American Civil War. It wasn't like North versus South or something like that. It was more like the entire nation of Arnor, you know, sort of dissolving from within, because it was family based. It wasn't regional, as I say.
It was dissolved into warring clans.
Exactly. So in that way, it was almost more like the English Civil War, like I'm thinking of Oliver Cromwell, than it was like the American Civil War, which was, you know, the northern states versus the southern states. There weren't those kinds of strict geographical lines.
Or the War of the Roses, too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, where you have different loyalties, and so there are some parts of the, you know, there's some locations which are, you know, whose loyalty is much firmer, right?
Yeah, you got the Yorks and the Lancasters, and then you got everyone who's just sort of waiting and watching.
Right. Yeah, now, Aururan is asking, how does it compare with Gondor's Kinstrife? And in a sense, it's... Well, the main difference with the Gondorian Kinstrife is that the Gondorian Kinstrife was binary. You know, it was, this guy is the rightful king, but there's a bunch of people who say he shouldn't be the king and this other dude should be instead. So there's, you know, it's a faction of people within the nation that are rebelling against this other person being, you know, this one person being king.
You get that a lot in royalty.
Right, exactly.
Where any big family name change after any big death of a major monarch, there's always that dispute going on.
Right, exactly. And that's more of the kind of thing with the dissolving of the Kingdom of Arnor, because there you have three claimants to the throne, essentially, and the different factions who each one think they should be king. That's why we get the scepter. Right. Here, you know, the question of who's going to have the scepter. Now, Arthedain the king of Arthedain physically had the scepter. So they're sort of technically the rulers, but each one of the kingdoms claims it. So unlike in the Kinstrafe, there wasn't a clear cut, this person is the king, this person is again, with the Kinstrife, it was this person is the obvious heir of the king, we just don't want him. Right, you know, we think that he's questionable, so we're gonna shoot for somebody else instead of for him.
It's like that nonsense where they had to import a king from Germany after I think the Stuart line fell out. Right, because
exactly.
All these little guys going, I'm the fifth cousin of the king, I'm the 12th cousin of the queen.
Yes, exactly. And Erokheb, I agree. It does seem a little bit strange that. I mean, if this is a stronghold of Rhudaur so close to Fornos, it seems weird that the capital Arthedain would be essentially on the frontier, right, with Rudauer. But I agree with Ericab that it does make sense, when your primary defensive mechanism is fortification, right?
Well, and a giant cliff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
you got a good vantage point, and you're unassailable from like two sides.
Right. It's their strongest point, and they want, so it's good for it to be right there. Like you can't, it, I would almost say that like the cause and effect goes differently, right? Fornost becomes their capital because it is the strong point on the frontier. Like it is the place where where Arthedain draws the line in the sand and says, you can't get us here. You can't get past here.
And you can see it's all sort of the battle of the heights too. Which one is higher up on the hills?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's true actually. Minas Run here is up on a down, but if we look over, which we won't be able to see too clearly, but yeah, you can see it's actually fairly equal, at least with the lower wall. You can just see the lower wall, the outer wall of Fornost down here, which is pretty much at eye level from here. The central keep is higher, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those little compensation plans over
there. Right, exactly.
And it's turtles all the way down.
Yep. Okay. So this, what is this? Is this a palace? When we look up here, when we come further in, when we come both further up and further in up here, this sort of colonnade area obviously looks much more casual, right? Of course, it's facing the cliff on that side, so it's not going to come under assault from there.
No, it's just to look at, not to get in.
Exactly. Notice here we see this large paving stone not paving stone, but this large circular dais with the big Rudauer symbol.
Yeah.
Here, and notice how they have the Rudauer crown set within a 7-point. No, it's not a 7-pointed star. This is a 6-pointed star, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And he's got a crown that looks like his trees, but also kind of looks like the Angmar crown.
Yes. That is. It's all broken up, so you can't quite see it, but that is a 6-pointed star, isn't it? Yeah. I hadn't noticed that before, because the Númenórean stars are 7-pointed that we see in all of the Arnorian ruins through Bree and through the Shire, and that we were looking at over in Evendim. Well, yeah, let's wait to draw conclusions until we can see one a little bit more fully than that.
Yeah.
Do we have any over here inside the colonnade? I don't think so. What do I say? These are all in squares. Oh, hang on.
I wonder if the 6 is sort of the whole.
Yeah, no, it is 6-pointed.
Yeah, it is 6-pointed. It's almost like he's declaring himself the separate from the star.
Right.
He is the 7.
Now look at this guy.
Subtle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, check out the crown right there.
Yeah. He's wearing the crown and holding the sword.
And the orb.
And that's probably a Palantir, right? That he's holding.
Yeah,
you'd think.
But orbs have always been used by kings as a symbol of being in control of the world.
Right. But of course, it's particularly significant since the possession of the Palantiri was one of the main points of contention between the kingdoms of the 3 sub-kingdoms of Arnor.
And a huge military advantage.
Yes, exactly. There were 3, of course, up here in the north. One of which was the one out in the Elf Towers, which is only useful for looking west over the sea. So there were 2 which were of primary sort of tactical usefulness, right? And And both of them were possessed by Arthedain. And of course, both of them lost by King Arvedui in the ship, where we met his suave-looking ghost a couple weeks back.
So wishful thinking?
Yeah, I do think this is wishful thinking. This seems to be...
The sword, too. Seems...
Yes, he's holding upright an unsheathed sword, right, which suggests a king at war. And the blade is up, right? So, he's holding it in his hand and the blade is up. So he's not holding it like with the blade down as if it were just like a sign of vigilance or something like that. This is him holding the sword with the sword up and then the palantir in his left hand. And he's wearing a crown. So I don't know which like Rudauran king this dude is, but he presumably is a Rudauran king. And you can tell that by the fact that he's wearing a crown. Right, I mean, the king of Arnor, the king of Arthedain, wouldn't wear a crown. He would be wielding the scepter of Illuminus.
Yeah. He doesn't have a scepter, does he?
No, he doesn't. Just the palantir. So yeah, I mean, that's how Weathertop got destroyed, was in the wars over who would control the palantir from there. Because the other palantir was at Illuminus, which of course the king of Arthedain had. With him at Fornos, presumably.
I think it's interesting that he chose to predict he would have a palantir, but not the scepter in that statue, though.
It is, but see, there I'm not sure. Yeah, and because I mean, you're right. If you're going to make a wish fulfillment statue, why don't you make him holding the scepter of Illuminus, right? But it seems to be, I don't know, I don't think that this is necessarily... Because, I mean, if you look behind him, there's a very prominent carving of the statue of the Scepter of Illuminus, like right on the...
the biggest one.
Yeah, right on the wall behind him there. So, I don't think that they're, abjuring the scepter by any means. But I think what they wanted to do was to go with the warlike thing, right? This is meant to be a little bit more aggressive, more threatening.
Yeah. Look what I'm going to do to you guys, kind of.
Yes. And Ericab, I was thinking the same thing. Look at how in the wall behind him, how you get the scepter of Illuminus with the Rudaran crown right above it, right?
Yeah.
As if their forest symbol is crowning the scepter of Illuminus, as Ericab suggests. It looks like they're seeking almost to subordinate the Arnorian scepter to the Rudauran symbol.
Greatness
there.
Of Rudar.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Aragorn, I was thinking too, of course, as Aragorn points out here, the statue is of a different stone than the wood around, a quite different color. Of course, that's in part because it's glowing. Let me accept this quest to stop from glowing.
That's a good quest if you're exploring out here.
Yes, it is. But
it's not glowing for me. I'm too low level.
Oh, you're too low level, right? Yeah. Let's see. Well, it is. What is it? It's a level 25 quest. Yeah. But anyway.
What does the text box say it is?
What does it say the statue is?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Man.
No, it just talks about statue of in Minas Run. Missing relics throughout Minas Run.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it says after examining the Arnorian statue at Minas Run. Arnorian is pretty generic there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, Aragorn's sensible question there is: does this suggest a different provenance, a different dating of the statue compared with the ruin? I wouldn't think so, given how it's set on a pedestal and set on this big old, dais here in the middle of the thing. I wouldn't think that it would... I mean, that it would be made from a different kind of stone wouldn't be very surprising, right? I mean, that would be like making a marble statue in the middle of a fortress that you would not make out of marble, obviously. So
yeah, you would. Yeah, that in itself makes way more sense than...
Yeah.
I had a comment about the standing stones we'll get into next time.
Oh, yes.
Not an important stone in that case.
Yes, I agree.
But yeah, in this case, he's made of marble because that's stone you make statues out of. Yes.
Yeah. I wish we could see his face more clearly, but we can't really see his face.
It's a bit eroded. I'm on my lowest graphis setting, so I don't get kicked off again.
Yeah. No, even on high, even on ultra high, you can't see his features, his facial features very much. I can see
those trees pretty well back there now. They're a lot more clear as being
pine trees. Yes. This is much more visible.
I don't see any pine trees though. All the ones in Farnos look like a different kind of tree.
Yes, those do seem to be deciduous trees. But the main pine woods, I believe, are the ones over in, I'm looking at the map again, over in Nan Amlong East and further from there, and like the north of the Trollshaws as well.
Yeah. Oh, north of Bree too has.
Yeah, that's like all the classic Rudar. Rudar had quite a bit of territory.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's Mosey.
What's Mosey? I'm not,
Don't fall off.
Yeah.
Like I almost did.
That was close.
Yeah. I'm just glad I'm not on a war steed.
Let's head back. Yeah, exactly.
I can turn my horse in 30 seconds.
Let's head back to the road. Yeah. Wiggins' horse is a heavy war steed, so I mean it corners like a barge.
Yeah, I just got one of those from my champion, and it's just like, well, it's basically driving a tank.
Yes, exactly.
You basically just ride your horse with the knowledge that you're the most dangerous thing and nothing can stand in your way anyway, so why bother turning?
That's right. Now these are natural rock formations down here.
Oh, yeah, I always found these were really interesting.
But yeah, they don't look like natural rock formations.
I've seen weird stuff like this before, actually, in Ireland.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I believe it.
They have weirder ones. They have ones that grow natural hexagons out there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I do think what they're going for is natural rock formations. I mean, you can see that. You
get that with layers of sediment when you have the lower layers are more sandy, so the wind blows them away. And then the tough ones remain. So you get this fun layer cake look.
Whenever I come over the rise there and I see these stones over on the left, it always makes me think of the Chronicles of Narnia. I think of The Horse and His Boy and The Tombs by Tashbaan. Of course, it's not in a desert, so the setting is nothing like right. But just the shape of those stones always makes me think of Lewis's description of the tombs.
Sorry, I know more about rocks this week than I usually do. My kids are studying it at school.
Well, there you go. And yes, Aragorn, that's a goblin camp, I believe, down there.
Yes, it is.
They're squatting amongst the... Yeah.
No, that's a pretty good defensible place. It's a labyrinth.
It is, yes. All right, let's continue on up the road here. And it's getting late, and I spent longer than I expected at Minas Run. Maybe we'll get up to the
Estaldine.
Well, no, to the dwarves. No. I wanted to go to Althrakar first.
Yes.
Yep. Now, of course, we did a tour of the elf camp after we met Gildor, and we came here to see where Gildor was in the game. We're in our general survey and tour of the lands. We are coming organically into the area near where we found Gildor. Okay, so having climbed up into the highlands here now, the land up here is relatively flat.
And we're getting those pine trees.
Yeah.
A healthy mix, I think. Coniferous and deciduous.
Okay, now we have a river crossing. Notice this cruder wooden bridge that's thrown across these old stone.
Yep, another makeshift save.
Yeah, so you can see that how they're using the ruin. Now let's do a quick inspection of our ruin over here. Who controlled this river crossing? Probably Rudar.
I'm going to say Rudar, yeah, that's my money for that.
But let's see what we see. Yep.
You see some plinths here.
Yeah, we got definitely root hour all around here.
6-star and the crown.
6-pointed star and the woodland crown. Yes.
And the scepter on the.
Yeah. Yeah.
The colonnades here.
Right on.
Very Roman looking. Tops.
Yes.
Doric column.
Yeah. Yeah. And yes, Eric Heb, I agree. This river crossing would have been extremely, extremely important. Not because, of course, this is because we're not really close to the frontier to Fornost. I mean, we're a little bit close, but not all that close. But of course, if they had Minas Run would have been their first line of defense, or their last outpost over there towards Fornost. But this would, of course, been crucial for communication between. Minas Run would have been completely cut off without this river crossing here. So. Nice. You can see the peaks up behind Fornost.
Nan Wetherin's almost completely cut off well by itself.
Yes. Yes.
So this would have been a key strategic point to completely conquering Nan Wetherin.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Dime is right. There's a ranger over here, Orthon, whose campfire next to which he hangs out is over here. And he is, as Dime is reminding me, a ranger who is into maps and geography.
And sending us to do things while he stays here.
Exactly. Well,
That's what we were talking about. They have to stay here and watch. They don't have time to pick flowers.
Exactly. This field won't watch itself. But again, we can notice the three rangers that we've seen, right? We've encountered rangers in exactly 3 locations so far, here in the North Downs, right? One here by this river crossing, some up and Emmonreith, right? That lookout hill which overlooks the entire Fornost Valley. And then one up right next to the entrance to the Fornost Valley, who would be able to give the first warning if, the unquiet dead who live in Fornost decide to come south. So yeah, this is, it is interesting to see how they are sort of tactically placed. Well, let's ride up and find the dwarf settlement, but we want to have time. We'll take the time we'll start there and look at that next time.
I think we want to get back on the main road because I've gotten lost in these hills a couple of times.
And I don't want to wander. There are bear dens and things, and no point in bringing our newbies among them. So let's head back down here to the road. Gonna wait for folks.
Ooh, windmills.
All right, lots of farmland up here.
Gold. No, there's some quartz right there. That's where you get some of your statue.
That's right.
Is everyone in front of me or behind me? I can't tell. I think I took a massive shortcut. I'll meet you at Oathricar.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, here's the crossroads. You guys at the crossroads yet?
Almost.
Okay. I'll just hang out here.
Yeah, you're in front of us. I stopped to wait for folks to collect from the...
I had things chasing. I was in a hurry.
You had things chasing you. I understand.
A bright purple Henderval. Man, I haven't been up here when I was this low level in a long time. It's kind of a fun experience again.
Just looking out over the terrain from here, right? We've got hills off to the east.
Boxton Pass over there.
Yes. And then you've got the larger mountains up to the north.
You got your swampland down south.
Yes. Down over there on the other side of the rise.
Got your elves of the bayou.
Right. South from here is where we get down to the elves. You can see another ruin on the top of that hill. What looks like it was a watchtower, because that's.
I think that's a beacon.
Is it a beacon?
Yeah, I keep hoping there's going to be a quest for it, and there never is.
I know there's a beacon up here, up to the north.
Yeah.
Yes. So right, the Gildor and Glorian and those elves that we met before, who are having their little troll problem, are down in the south. And up here is a beacon. No, I was looking at the hill in the south. Actually, there's a ruin on top of the hill in the south, and it might be a beacon. I think it was a tower. I think that was a watchtower, but it's but this one is definitely, as you can see as we get closer to it.
Yeah.
That's definitely. I discovered that thing by accident the first time I saw it. I just never noticed it. I think because back then I was running fairly low graphics too, and it just kind of from a distance blended in with the hills. I was doing one of the flower quests and
that's exactly how
climbed up the slopes of that hill, and I'm like, oh, it's a beacon.
And then you couldn't light it. It's like,
yes,
why?
Exactly.
I want to light it.
Exactly.
Want to see what'll happen. Want to start a quest. Want to draw some aggro of something.
Okay, and so we can see as we're coming through here, notice the cleaner stone. This is not a ruin.
Nope.
Right? And you can see, of course, by the interestingly angular arch that we are clearly in a totally different kind of architecture.
The Art Deco designs of the dwarf.
That's right. That's right. So we'll come in and I'll introduce myself to the stable master here.
Oh, I hate that bridge.
Okay. All right.
Bridge always makes me flinch when I go under this one. Yeah.
Yes, it's like the Erie Canal song.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. All right. So we'll explore this little dwarf encampment up here next time. So we'll begin up here. We'll figure out how we'll travel up here for next time. But this is where we'll pick up next time, and we'll come here, and then we'll head down towards Esteldine from here.
We gonna have a delay for little one's Halloween candy getting, or I think we're gonna be on time.
No, I think I'm gonna do it at the normal time next time. So
I might be on late. It depends on whether my baby's sleeping schedule's been messed up enough.
I understand. We'll sort it out. But okay.
Well, I'll definitely be here for the riding around part.
Cool. Excellent. Very good.
All right.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us this week. I look forward to another week next week as we boldly head towards the Barrow-Downs in the story. We'll, of course, be going down and exploring the Barrow-Downs in-game after we get... I think I want to get inside the Barrow in the story before we head down to the Barrow-Downs. So we still have probably maybe a couple weeks before we get there.
Tiempo de los Muertos, maybe.
Exactly. Maybe we'll get there. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. I will see you guys in a week. Bye now.
Thank you, Pine Leaf.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.